The Sicilian sun, a relentless orb, beat down on the dusty tarmac, shimmering heat waves that distorted the already surreal landscape. Decades had bled into one another, marked not by the slow march of seasons but by the phantom chase of a ghost, a man woven into the very fabric of Italy's shadowed history. Matteo Messina Denaro, known in hushed whispers as Diabolic, was more than just a fugitive. He was an empire built on fear, a legacy of blood stretching back to the audacious bombings that had silenced the nation's brightest legal minds, Falcone and Borsellino. His name, once a thunderclap of terror, had become a persistent hum of defiance, a testament to the pervasive reach of the Corleonesi, a mafia that had long since transcended mere criminal enterprise to become a parallel state. For 30 years, the hunt for Denaro had been an obsession, a national wound that refused to heal, each evaded capture a fresh insult to the countless lives crushed beneath the weight of his dominion. This was not just about a crime lord. It was about the enduring power of silence, the insidious grip of omerta, and the generations of men and women who had dedicated their lives to unraveling a knot of corruption so complex it had choked the very soul of Sicily. The air in the Palermo precinct crackled with a different kind of heat, not the oppressive glare of the Sicilian sun, but the electric tension of imminent discovery. For years, the anti-mafia unit had been engaged in a high-stakes chess match, their every move met with Denaro's calculated evasions. Coded communications, intercepted whispers from a vast network of loyalists, meticulously mapped financial trails that siphoned billions into his hidden coffers, all had been painstakingly pieced together, like fragments of a shattered mirror reflecting a monstrous image. Yet, the man himself remained elusive, a phantom slipping through their fingers with unnerving regularity. Each raid, each painstakingly orchestrated sting, had culminated in the same hollow echo. He was gone, vanished into the labyrinthine network of safe houses and false identities he had cultivated over 3 decades. The psychological toll was immeasurable, a slow erosion of hope and a gnawing certainty that Denaro, a master of adaptation and ruthless pragmatism, might indeed be untouchable, his legend cemented by his very invisibility. The weight of past failures, the ghosts of compromised operations, hung heavy in the stale air of the investigation rooms, a constant reminder of the formidable adversary they faced. The problem was not merely apprehending a single individual, it was dismantling a meticulously constructed fortress of loyalty and fear. Denaro was not just a leader. He was a symbol, the embodiment of an era defined by brutal assassinations and defiant resistance to the state. His charisma, a chilling paradox given his savagery, had allowed him to command an unwavering devotion from his inner circle, a cadre of individuals bound by blood, shared history, and the lucrative spoils of his illicit empires. Extortion, drug trafficking, industrial-level corruption, Denaro's tentacles had spread far beyond the rugged terrain of his Sicilian homeland, reaching into the highest echelons of power and commerce. The sheer audacity of his operation, the seamless blend of the public and clandestine lives he led, had made him a legend in his own time, a figure of both dread and a perverse admiration within certain circles. To understand Denaro was to understand the deep-seated societal pathologies that allowed him to thrive, the intricate web of complicity that had shielded him from justice for so long. This investigation was more than a manhunt, it was a reckoning. The capture of Matteo Messina Denaro represented the culmination of a lifelong battle waged by countless unsung heroes, judges, prosecutors, ordinary citizens, and dedicated law enforcement officers who had paid the ultimate price or lived under the constant shadow of intimidation. His eventual apprehension, not in a dramatic shootout but in the sterile quiet of a private clinic, undergoing treatment for cancer under a stolen identity, spoke volumes about the long game, the slow, persistent erosion of his power and support. The image that would soon emblazon news feeds globally, a stooped, bespectacled figure, his face a mask of tranquil resignation, flanked by the stoic presence of the carabinieri, was not merely the end of a manhunt. It was the symbolic closing of a chapter steeped in violence, the crushing of an era that had held Italy captive for far too long, a profound statement that even the most elusive of criminals could eventually be brought to account. The nation had waited decades for this moment, a moment that promised not just justice, but a fragile hope for a future unburdened by the specter of the Mafia's darkest legacy. The years leading up to Denaro's capture were a masterclass in adaptive evasion, a constant state of flux where security protocols were not static guidelines but fluid responses to an ever-shifting threat landscape. Law enforcement agencies, armed with increasingly sophisticated surveillance technologies, found themselves in a relentless game of cat and mouse, a digital and physical pursuit that demanded an almost supernatural level of intuition and foresight. The sheer scale of Denaro's support network, a clandestine infrastructure built over decades, presented a formidable obstacle. This wasn't merely about individuals providing shelter. It involved complex logistical operations, from securing untraceable communication channels to orchestrating the movement of illicit funds across international borders, all designed to maintain his freedom and operational capacity. Each seemingly minor transaction, each coded message intercepted, represented a potential key, a thread that might unravel the vast tapestry of his hidden existence. The challenge lay not in identifying potential sympathizers, but in discerning the critical linchpins of this network, the individuals whose roles were indispensable to his continued evasion. Furthermore, the psychological dimension of Denaro's prolonged invisibility cannot be overstated. He cultivated an aura of almost mythical invincibility, a legend that served to both inspire loyalty among his followers and instill paralyzing fear in potential informants. This fear was not merely of physical retribution, it extended to the erosion of social trust, the insidious notion that anyone, anywhere, could be an informant, leading to a pervasive atmosphere of suspicion and isolation within communities where his influence was strongest. Consider how this operates. A local shopkeeper might implicitly cooperate by not reporting suspicious activity, not out of direct coercion, but out of a deep-seated understanding of the unspoken rules, a survival instinct honed by years of observing the consequences of defiance. This subtle, pervasive control created a buffer zone, a silent shield that absorbed the initial impact of investigative efforts, allowing Denaro to adapt and relocate before any tangible evidence could be solidified. The intelligence agencies understood that dismantling this psychological grip was as crucial as intercepting communications. Building on this, however, the investigative focus began to shift from direct pursuit to a more nuanced approach: economic warfare. By meticulously tracing the flow of money, by identifying and seizing the assets that fueled his operations, the legitimate businesses that served as fronts, the shell corporations, the illicit enterprises generating vast profits, law enforcement aimed to starve the beast. This strategy wasn't about immediate apprehension, but about systematically dismantling the financial scaffolding that supported Denaro's empire and his network of protectors. Now imagine the intricate financial mapping required. Scrutinizing offshore accounts, untangling complex ownership structures, and following the money trail through a labyrinth of intermediaries. Each successful asset seizure, each frozen account, represented a tangible blow, not just to Denaro's wealth, but to the morale of his organization and the willingness of those who benefited from his illicit activities to continue their support. This approach acknowledged that Denaro's power was inextricably linked to his financial clout. Consequently, the sustained pressure on Denaro's financial infrastructure forced subtle shifts in his operational patterns. While his personal movements remained clandestine, the economic ecosystem that sustained him became increasingly vulnerable. This vulnerability, while not immediately leading to his location, created micro-cracks in the facade of his invincibility. It alerted investigators to areas of financial strain, to potential points of friction within his network, and to the desperation that such pressure could breed. The meticulous tracking of these economic arteries allowed investigators to anticipate his potential needs, his likely recourse in times of financial duress, and the individuals who might be tasked with addressing these emergent challenges. It was a slow, deliberate process, akin to redirecting a vast river by subtly altering its tributaries, aiming to eventually guide the flow toward a predictable endpoint, even if that endpoint was years in the making. This strategic economic pressure fundamentally altered the dynamics of the long-running pursuit. Reflecting on this journey so far, a complex tapestry has been meticulously woven, illustrating a protracted struggle against an adversary whose influence seeped into the very foundations of society. The pursuit, extending over 3 decades, transcended the mere apprehension of an individual. It represented a systemic challenge, a prolonged effort to unravel a deeply entrenched power structure. Concepts of loyalty, fear, and economic dependency have been shown to be the bedrock upon which this dominion was built, forming an intricate network that proved remarkably resilient against conventional investigative approaches. The sheer adaptability and foresight demonstrated by the fugitive, coupled with the unwavering, if often silent, support he received, underscored the profound societal and psychological dimensions of this long-standing conflict. Each evaded capture was not an isolated incident, but a testament to the sophisticated mechanisms of evasion honed over years of operational experience, a constant recalibration in response to evolving threats. The cumulative effect of these persistent challenges has painted a vivid picture of the intricate dance between those who sought to restore order and an elusive figure who had mastered the art of vanishing. It's akin to trying to dam a vast, subterranean river. While surface skirmishes might be won, the true battle lies in understanding and redirecting the unseen currents that sustain its flow. The economic pressures, the constant surveillance, the slow, painstaking reconstruction of a financial empire, these were not mere procedural steps, but vital tools in a deliberate strategy designed to erode the foundations of denial and complicity. These concerted efforts, over an extended period, gradually tightened the net, not with the sudden snap of a trap, but with the inexorable force of a slowly constricting tide, gradually reducing the available avenues of escape and support. As we pivot towards the final reflection, the convergence of these interwoven threads becomes increasingly apparent. The persistent investigation, the strategic disruption of illicit financial channels, and the gradual erosion of the fugitive's support system have all culminated in a situation where the seemingly impenetrable fortress of his evasion began to show undeniable signs of strain. The long arc of this pursuit highlights how sustained, multifaceted pressure can ultimately overcome even the most artful and deeply entrenched resistance. The narrative has moved beyond the singular pursuit of a criminal mastermind to encompass a broader examination of the societal conditions that allow such figures to emerge and persist. This journey through the intricate layers of investigation and evasion has laid the groundwork for understanding the profound significance of the eventual resolution, a resolution that speaks not only to the conclusion of a manhunt but to the enduring pursuit of a more just and transparent society. The relentless pursuit of Matteo Messina Denaro, spanning 3 decades, was never solely about apprehending a single individual. It was a prolonged, arduous testament to the enduring resilience of justice against the pervasive shadow of organized crime. The very longevity of his evasion spoke not just to his cunning and the deep roots of his power, but to the complex societal vulnerabilities that allowed such an empire of fear to flourish. Denaro, the embodiment of the Corleonese's brutal legacy, was more than a fugitive. He was a symbol of an era defined by audacious violence and an insidious network of complicity that permeated Sicilian life. His ghost, diabolic, haunted the collective consciousness of a nation yearning for an end to decades of bloodshed, a phantom that represented the deeply ingrained omerta, the code of silence that had long protected the guilty. The decades-long chase was a national obsession, a slow, grinding process that chipped away at the edifice of Denaro's power, piece by painstaking piece. The eventual capture, occurring not in a blaze of gunfire but in the quiet anonymity of a private clinic under a false identity, marked a profound symbolic victory. It was the culmination of generations of relentless effort, a quiet triumph for the countless individuals who had dedicated their lives to dismantling the intricate web of corruption and violence. The image of Denaro, aged and unbowed but finally in custody, carried an immense weight. It represented the closing of a dark chapter, a definitive moment where the state, through persistent, strategic action, asserted its authority over the forces that had sought to undermine it. This was more than just the end of a manhunt. It was a powerful affirmation that even the most elusive figures, protected by decades of fear and loyalty, could ultimately be brought to account. The meticulous mapping of financial networks, the relentless surveillance, and the strategic economic pressure had not merely closed in on a man. They had systematically dismantled the very infrastructure that sustained his reign of terror, proving that patience and unwavering dedication could indeed prevail against seemingly insurmountable odds. The lasting impact of this long pursuit resonates far beyond the single arrest. It underscores a vital truth: that the fight against deeply entrenched criminality is a generational endeavor, demanding not only courage and skill but an unyielding commitment to unraveling the systemic issues that allow such power to fester. Denaro's capture is a reminder that while individual actors may be brought to justice, the struggle for a truly equitable and secure society requires ongoing vigilance, a continuous effort to address the root causes of corruption, and an unwavering defense of the principles of law and order. The triumph is not in the final capture alone, but in the persistent, methodical work that made it possible, a quiet, determined force that continues to protect the integrity of justice and inspire hope for a future unburdened by the shadows of the past. The true practice of upholding justice begins now, in the continuous vigilance and dedication to the principles that have, at long last, brought this era to a close.